There is a person I want you to think about for a moment. Not someone you read about, not a character from a movie, someone you might actually know. They are intelligent. They understand things quickly. When they talk about their goals, they sound clear, focused, even inspiring. They know exactly what they want. And for a brief period, sometimes days, sometimes weeks, they actually go after it. They wake up early. They stay disciplined. They make the right choices. And then, quietly, without warning, they stop. Not because something went wrong, not because life interrupted them, not because the goal became impossible. They just pulled back. And if you ask them why, they won't have a clean answer. They'll say things like, "I got busy. I needed a break. The timing wasn't right." Maybe they'll even blame something external, the economy, the people around them, bad luck. But somewhere inside, they know the truth. The timing was fine. The circumstances were manageable. The only thing that got in the way was them. This is not a rare story. This is one of the most common and least talked about patterns in human life. And the painful part is, it doesn't happen once. It happens in cycles. The same person gets close, pulls back, gets close, pulls back, year after year. Different goals, different areas of life, but the same invisible wall. The question worth sitting with is not, why didn't they try hard enough? The real question is, why does a person keep stopping themselves from the life they say they want? That question has a real answer, and that answer changes everything. Most conversations about self-improvement focus on action. Do more, stay consistent, push through resistance. And that advice isn't wrong, but it skips something important. It skips the part where we ask, why is there resistance in the first place? Because the resistance is not random. It's not laziness. It's not weakness. It's not a character flaw you were born with. The resistance is a signal. And most people spend their entire lives trying to override it without ever understanding what it's pointing to. Think about the person who has been trying to lose weight for years. They know the diet. They've read the books. They understand what to eat and what not to eat. But every few weeks, something happens. A hard day at work, a fight with a partner, a moment of boredom at night. And they undo everything in one evening. Then they feel guilty, they restart, they get going again, and the cycle continues. Or think about the person who wants financial stability. They tell themselves this year will be different. They start saving, they cut back on spending, and for a while it works. But then, almost on cue, they find a way to spend what they saved. Sometimes it's a purchase that didn't need to happen. Sometimes it's a business idea they pour money into impulsively. Sometimes it's just a slow return to old patterns, so gradual they barely notice until the balance is back to where it started. These aren't stories about people who lack information. These are stories about people who are, in some quiet and unconscious way, protecting themselves. From what, you might ask? From the discomfort that comes with change, from the fear of being seen differently, from the unknown version of themselves that would exist on the other side of success. And this is the thing Brianna Wiest writes about with a kind of clarity that is rare. The idea that the most significant obstacle in any person's life is rarely external. It is the mountain they have built inside themselves. And until they understand that mountain, what it's made of, why it exists, and what it's actually trying to do, no amount of effort, discipline, or motivation will be enough to move past it. I want to start with an idea that sounds strange when you first hear it. The ways you are holding yourself back were once keeping you safe. Think about a child who grows up in a home where success, attention, or standing out somehow led to conflict. Maybe when they did well, a parent compared them to a sibling in a cruel way. Maybe being excited about something made them a target for ridicule. Maybe they learned, very early, that wanting things too much leads to disappointment. That child grows up, but the lesson stays. Success equals danger. Wanting things equals pain. Now they are an adult. They have goals. They say they want to build something, earn more, become someone different. And they mean it. They genuinely mean it. But somewhere beneath conscious thought, there is an old signal still running. A pattern from childhood still active in the adult nervous system, whispering, "Be careful. This is not safe. Pull back." And so they do, over and over again. This is not weakness. This is the brain doing exactly what it was trained to do: protect you from the thing it learned to associate with pain. The problem is, the lesson is outdated. The threat is no longer real, but the brain does not automatically update its operating system. You have to do that work yourself. And you cannot do that work until you understand that your sabotage has a logic to it. It made sense at some point. Understanding that is not an excuse to continue the behavior. It's the starting point for actually changing it. People talk about the comfort zone as if it's a warm, pleasant place. For many people, it's not. A person can be familiar with anxiety, with financial stress, with feeling stuck, and still, unconsciously, prefer that familiar state over the uncertainty of change. Because familiar, even when it's painful, feels known, and the brain prioritizes known over unknown almost every time. I've thought about this a lot. Why someone would choose a situation they hate over a situation that could be better. And the answer is not irrational when you look closely. The pain of the familiar feels manageable. You have adapted to it. You know what to expect. Even the suffering has a rhythm you've learned to navigate. The unknown doesn't offer that. The unknown asks you to move through discomfort without any guarantee of where you'll land. So the brain runs a quiet calculation: stay here where I know the rules, or move towards something I can't predict. And it almost always votes for the familiar. This is why people stay in jobs they hate for years. This is why people stay in relationships long past the point where they should have left. This is why someone can know intellectually that a change would improve their life and still not make it. It has nothing to do with intelligence or desire. It has everything to do with what the nervous system has been trained to call home. The path forward is not to force yourself into the unknown with willpower alone. It's to gradually make the new thing feel familiar through small, repeated exposure until the brain stops treating it as a threat. Most people treat their emotional triggers as problems to suppress. They get angry and they tell themselves, "Don't be like that." They feel jealousy and they push it down, feel ashamed of it. They feel anxiety and they distract themselves as quickly as possible. But there is a different way to look at triggers. Every time something gets under your skin, really gets under it, that is not a random event. That is your internal world pointing directly at something unresolved. When you feel deeply bothered by someone else's success, that discomfort is not really about them. It's about a belief you carry regarding your own worth or possibility. When you feel a sharp reaction to criticism, not just a mild annoyance, but something that cuts deep, that's not just pride. That's an old wound being touched. When someone not responding to your message makes you spiral, that is not about the unanswered text. It's about something older, a fear of abandonment, a belief that you are not worth someone's time, a pattern that was written long before that person entered your life. The world you carry inside you is constantly projecting outward. What you react to most strongly tells you exactly where your unfinished business lives. And this is actually useful information. This is a map. Not a map of where you are broken, a map of where you still need to do the work of understanding yourself. The question is not, why am I so triggered by this? The question is, what does this reaction tell me about what I believe about myself? That shift in the question changes everything. There is a particular kind of suffering that is very hard to name. It's the feeling of knowing, somewhere deep, that you are living a smaller life than you were capable of. It's not depression exactly, it's not sadness exactly. It's more like a low, quiet ache, a sense that you are managing your life rather than actually living it. And what makes it difficult is that it can coexist with a perfectly reasonable life. You could have a stable job, a decent routine, relationships that are functional, and still carry this feeling. Because the discomfort isn't about what's missing from the outside. It's about the gap between who you currently are and who you sense you need to become. Brianna Wiest describes this gap as the source of most of our internal unrest. And the instinct, when you feel that unrest, is usually to quiet it, to distract, to tell yourself you're being ungrateful, to numb the feeling with scrolling, with food, with busyness. But the gap doesn't close by being ignored. The gap closes by doing the uncomfortable, incremental work of becoming someone new. And here's the part that most people miss. Becoming someone new means letting go of who you currently are. That sounds simple, but think about what that actually requires. Your current identity is attached to habits, relationships, environments, and beliefs that have been with you for years. Some of them are comfortable. Some of them define how you see yourself. Changing means parts of that old identity have to come apart. And that is a loss, even when it's a necessary one. A lot of people start the journey of change and then turn back, not because the work was too hard, but because they hit that point of grief, the part where who you used to be has to die a little. They mistake that grief for a sign that they're going the wrong direction, but it's not a wrong sign, it's a right one. It means the transformation is real. There is a belief that a lot of intelligent people hold, that understanding a problem is the same as solving it. And for some problems, that's true. If your car breaks down and you understand what's wrong with the engine, that knowledge directly leads to fixing it. But emotional patterns are different. You can fully understand, intellectually, that your anxiety is irrational. You can map out the exact reasons why your fear is disproportionate. You can explain to someone else in perfect detail why your self-sabotaging behavior doesn't serve you, and still do it anyway. Because emotional patterns are not stored in the part of the brain that processes logic. They live in the body. They live in the nervous system. They are activated before the thinking mind even gets involved. The person who has a fear of rejection doesn't intellectually decide to feel panicked when someone criticizes them. The reaction happens before the decision. The body responds, and the mind tries to catch up and explain it afterward. This is why people find that therapy helps, not because it provides new information, but because it creates a different kind of processing, a slower, more deliberate engagement with the feeling itself, rather than just the story about the feeling. This is why journaling works for some people, not because writing gives them new facts, but because it slows the mind down enough to actually feel what is happening underneath the noise. This is why certain conversations with the right person can shift something that years of thinking could not. You can't logic your way out of a feeling. You have to actually go through it. And most people, understandably, don't want to do that. Feeling grief or fear or shame fully, even for a few minutes, is genuinely uncomfortable. It feels dangerous, even when it isn't. But here's what happens when you avoid it. The feeling doesn't disappear. It finds another exit. It comes out as irritability, or procrastination, or a sudden urge to destroy the good thing you were building. The emotion is going to move through you one way or another. The only choice you have is whether you do that consciously or let it run in the background, quietly wrecking things. There's a reason people describe working on themselves as hard. And it is not because the work itself is physically demanding. It is because the brain has been wired over thousands of years to treat emotional discomfort the same way it treats physical danger. When you feel the anxiety of starting something new, when you sit with the discomfort of an honest conversation, when you push yourself to try something that might fail, your nervous system sends out stress signals. The heart rate goes up slightly, the body tenses, a quiet alarm sounds somewhere inside. And most people read that signal as a reason to stop. But that alarm is not telling you that you are in danger. It is telling you that you are doing something unfamiliar, something your brain has not built a comfortable template for yet. The feeling of growth and the feeling of threat can be almost indistinguishable from the inside. This is one of the quieter insights in Brianna Wiest's work, and one that I think is genuinely underappreciated. The discomfort of becoming is real, but discomfort and danger are not the same thing. When a person learns to sit in that discomfort without immediately retreating, even for a few moments longer than they normally would, something starts to shift. The nervous system begins to update its information. It begins to learn, this is not a threat. This is something new, and new things are survivable. That update doesn't happen in one moment. It builds over time through repeated experience. But it starts with the decision to stay in the discomfort for just a little longer than feels comfortable. Not forever, not without care, just long enough for the brain to receive new information. Here is something that sounds obvious once you say it out loud, but that most people spend years avoiding. Your life right now is a very accurate reflection of who you are right now. Not who you could be, not who you intend to become, who you currently are. Your habits, your beliefs, your automatic reactions, your unconscious expectations of yourself and of the world. All of that is producing your current results. And this matters for one specific reason. If you want different results, genuinely different, not just a temporary variation of the same pattern, the change has to happen at the level of identity, not just behavior. Most people try to change their actions while keeping their self-concept the same. They push themselves to do different things, but they still see themselves the same way inside. And what happens is, the new behavior eventually snaps back. Because behavior, over time, tends to align with identity. A person who sees themselves as someone who is bad with money will find ways to remain bad with money, even if they learn better habits for a while. A person who believes at a deep level that they are not the kind of person who succeeds will unconsciously arrange circumstances to confirm that belief. This is not because they're broken or destined for failure. It's because the mind is constantly seeking evidence to confirm its existing story about itself. The work, the real work, is to rewrite the story. Not with affirmations, not with fake confidence, but with the slow, honest process of examining where the story came from, whether it's actually true, and what would need to be true about yourself for the life you want to actually be possible. That examination is not comfortable, but it is the only thing that produces genuine, lasting change. Here is what most people don't realize. The gap doesn't stay the same size. When you are 23 and you delay the work of understanding yourself, the consequences are mild. You have time. You chalk it up to being young. You tell yourself you'll figure it out. When you are 35 and you are still running the same avoidance patterns, the same reflexive retreating, the same cycles of almost and not quite, the weight of the gap is heavier. Because now there are years behind you, not just possibilities ahead. And the quiet accumulation of all those small retreats, all those moments of pulling back just before the breakthrough, all those decisions to stay comfortable instead of growing, has shaped a life. Not through dramatic failure, through something softer and harder to trace. The opportunity you didn't take, the relationship you kept at a distance, the version of yourself you kept postponing. None of it feels like a big decision in the moment. That's the thing. It never feels significant when it's happening. It's only when you step back and see the pattern that the weight of it becomes clear. What most people don't realize is that self-sabotage does not announce itself. It does not arrive as a dramatic choice to ruin your life. It arrives as a slightly earlier bedtime than you planned, a subtle avoidance of the email you needed to send, a decision to eat something that numbs rather than feel something that clarifies. Small, quiet, cumulative. And over years, these small retreats build a wall that can feel almost structural, like it was always there. But it wasn't always there. It was built one small decision at a time. And that means it can also be dismantled one small decision at a time. I want to be honest here. There is no set of steps that solves this. There is no 5-day plan, no morning routine, no productivity system that gets to the root of what we've been talking about. What there is a practice, and it starts with something smaller than most people expect. The first thing is to start noticing your patterns without immediately judging them. Most people, when they catch themselves in self-sabotage, respond with shame. They think, "What is wrong with me?" And the shame makes the pattern worse, not better, because shame sends you further into hiding. Try instead to become curious. When you notice you've pulled back from something you said you wanted, instead of attacking yourself, ask, "What was I afraid of right before this happened? What did I think was going to go wrong? What old belief was running in the background?" Not to fix it immediately, just to see it clearly. The second thing is to begin separating discomfort from danger in real time. When you feel resistance towards something, a conversation, a creative project, a financial decision, pause for a moment and ask, is this actually dangerous, or is it just unfamiliar? That's a simple question, but it creates a small gap between the feeling and the automatic reaction. And in that gap, there is a choice. You don't have to make the discomfort disappear. You just need to be able to act while it's present. The third thing is to pay attention to your triggers, not to suppress them, but to read them. The next time something bothers you more than the situation seems to warrant, instead of distracting yourself from the feeling, sit with it for a few minutes. Ask, what does this reaction tell me about what I believe about myself? Where does this feeling come from? What part of my story does this connect to? You don't have to have clean answers right away. The practice is just asking the question honestly. And the fourth thing, the one that is probably the most important, is to begin taking your internal experience seriously. Not just your goals, not just your plans, not just the external metrics of success, but the quiet, ongoing conversation inside you. The part that knows when something is wrong, even when nothing is technically wrong. The part that is tired of certain dynamics, even when those dynamics look fine from the outside. The part that is hoping for something more honest, more alive, more aligned with who you sense you actually are. That voice deserves your attention, not because it's always right, but because it is always pointing somewhere. And the direction it's pointing, usually the direction that feels hardest, is almost always the direction you most need to go. The title of Brianna Wiest's book is The Mountain Is You. And when I first encountered that idea, I understood it on the surface, but the longer I sat with it, the more layers it revealed. Because the mountain is not just your bad habits, or your limiting beliefs, or your emotional wounds. The mountain is also your unexpressed potential. The mountain is the full weight of who you could become, and the fear of what it would take to get there. That's why it feels so heavy. That's why so many people stop climbing partway up. Not because the summit isn't real, but because getting there requires becoming someone new. And becoming someone new means saying goodbye to someone old. That grief is real. That discomfort is real. But the life on the other side of the climb, the one where you are more honest with yourself, less ruled by old fears, less trapped in familiar patterns, that is real too. You don't need to solve everything at once. You don't need to overhaul your entire life tomorrow. You just need to be willing to see the mountain clearly, not as an obstacle you were cursed with, but as the most important journey you will ever take, the one that begins and ends inside yourself.